Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We would like to welcome you to episode 1 of the Lyme Revive podcast. Lyme Revive Foundation is a nonprofit organization with a mission to educate the public about Lyme disease, fund treatments for eligible individuals, and improve the quality of life for those affected by the disease. So, the purpose of this podcast is to share stories of hope and healing and awareness about Lyme disease. The timing is perfect because it is now May, which is Lyme Disease Awareness Month, and I'm dialing in from New Hampshire. We are in the height of the tick season. Everywhere I go, someone is talking about that they pulled a tick themselves in the past few days. So this is really perfect timing to get this started. My name is Kara, and I'm a volunteer with Lyme Revive Foundation. Thank you so much for the opportunity to conduct these interviews and host the podcast. So my story, my personal journey with Lyme disease, is available in a different podcast. We could probably put the link down below for all of the details of that. But what I have learned over these past several months since sharing my story is that my experience was not typical because although it seemed long to me at the time, I experienced kind of a fast and dramatic downturn and upturn. And although it was 1.5 years, so that seemed like a long time for me, that is not the typical experience because most people with tick-borne illness experience a slow and gradual decline over a long period of time. They really struggle with getting a diagnosis, struggle with different treatments, different doctors, and it really just consumes, a huge portion of their life. Um, so I'm thankful that really the first doctor that I went to had a solution, and now that I'm feeling better, I'm devoting some time and effort to hoping that other people can get to that end line a little faster. Um, you know, Hopefully even faster than I did. Alrighty, and since we're getting started today, I would like to introduce my first guest. So this is a guest that I am personally, very excited to share with the audience. So I'll just provide a little background about how I came in contact with Jeannie Grant. So Jeannie Grant is our first guest today. So during my experience with Lyme disease, I furiously researched everybody on the internet, that I could find who took the treatment that I took and what really turned the corner for me. So in researching everybody, I came across a blog, a woman, I won't use her name in this podcast, but I came across a blog and she shared her experience taking the treatment and recovering. And so I talked to her on the phone, asked her a bunch of questions. Eventually, I was asking her so many questions that she said, you know what, I probably should just introduce you to Jeannie Grant because she is the source of all the information. And you would really benefit from being in contact with her. So that woman gave me Jeannie's phone number. I connected with her, and she was so kind to talk to me on the phone and text me and share her experience and really walk me through the entire experience. And what I learned is that so fascinating. She's actually, kind of patient zero, where this treatment was used for the first time to treat Lyme disease on Jeannie. So I was so fascinated to hear about that. And that's obviously a powerful story because then we know in the many years since then, it has gone on to be used by many different naturopathic doctors and helped so many people. And then also, it's just so nice that Jeannie actually took time to coach me through the experience and reminding me again, like the symptoms will go away, this will get better, you will get back to normal life. So I think we're ready to get started. Um, well, I would like to open a word of prayer, just because I know this is a very serious topic, and the people watching this, will really be this is kind of a pivotal moment in their lives. So, yes. Okay. So Dear God, I just pray over this podcast today. I just ask you to watch over the conversation and everything that we say. And I pray for every person who will watch this podcast soon after today or far in the future. They might be going through, the worst challenge of their entire life, thinking that they might not be able to overcome this. And we just pray for every person that you bring redemption to them in every single way that it is necessary: physical healing, spiritual help, just help them. God, we ask that for you to help them. Okay. So this is Jeannie Grant. And, so please feel free to add to the introduction in any way. So please introduce yourself in any way that you see fit.
Hey, yeah, so I was the first person to ever do the mineral formula. And so at the time I was living in Northern Virginia, and I have 5 children. And we moved to the country. We built a house and moved to the country, overlooking the river, and had a horse farm. And I gradually just started losing energy. I couldn't do my morning runs. Just slowly, I just stopped. I couldn't get myself to work out and get in the groove of it. And I started taking naps, and then my headaches were getting worse. I started getting neck ache and backache. And my husband at the time was trying to figure it out, because he was thinking, oh, is it hormonal? You getting ready to go through menopause? What's going on? And so we really researched everything, and we couldn't figure it out. And I had a couple children. I had one daughter that really struggled since she was 3. And so my children were struggling a little bit, but I didn't connect it at all. And finally, I got diagnosed by a chiropractor, and I would take my 13-year-old daughter with me, and we would go a couple times a week, and we would be better until we got home. And one day I was talking to the chiropractor, and I was like, oh, I need to bring in my son. And he was 10 at the time, I think. And the chiropractor was like, all right, your son should not have back problems at 10, because you guys need to get tested for Lyme disease. And so that was a journey in itself. I ended up doing the IGeneX, and was diagnosed positive. My son went to our primary care and did the regular Western blot, and he was positive. And so then it was a journey of finding out, how do I get better? And I had friends with Lyme, and they were chronic. They were chronic Lyme patients. So, they were struggling with them and their family. We lived in Northern Virginia, and it's very prominent there, but most people don't quite know. And so the one thing is, when I found out what I had, I was so elated. I was like, okay, now I can get better. And really, that's when the nightmare started. So I ended up going to a Lyme doctor that my girlfriend's uncle went to, and he had been in a wheelchair and was out of the wheelchair. And so I thought, oh, well, she helped him. She can help me. And mind you, he wasn't completely better, but he was out of the wheelchair. And so I went to her for about a year and a half. I ended up she did antibiotic treatment. And so I did I really believed in the antibiotic method. And even had a PICC line for 8 months, which, costs a fortune. Insurance doesn't like to cover it. And really, I didn't get better. I was just getting sicker and sicker. And at the same time, I had my children. Well, when I was with her, they weren't going to, other than my son. He was on antibiotics with our primary care, who had Lyme herself. Well, he ended up, what they say is, if you have 2 months of no symptoms, then you can go off the antibiotics. Well, he had he was probably on for a year and a half. And a month into, about a month after no symptoms, we had to pull him off because his stomach, he couldn't even eat. He had, you know, really the antibiotics had ruined his stomach flora. And so, so we took him off. I ended up switching doctors. And because he's pretty famous in Washington, D.C., and he had an opening. So I switched to him. And one thing I do want to note, when I went to that first doctor, it didn't dawn on me till years later, but I would sit in the waiting room talking to the receptionist. And she, I know, you know, she was getting ready for all the patients that came in. And mind you, it's very hard to get into these clinics. Like you can have a year or two waiting. Like they're just, and this was 2011. And so now I think it's a little, you know, it's a little easier, but I noticed that all the patient files were like 4 to 6 inches thick. And it didn't even dawn on me till later. I'm like, oh, like they never helped the patients. They never recovered. And so I went to the new doctor and had 4 of us going. So mind you, we're on probably 6 to 8 antibiotic pharmaceuticals. We were on Ativan, Lamotrigine, Zoloft. We were on all these pharmaceuticals, and we all just kept getting sicker and sicker. And it was really, if I went into the detail, it was a complete nightmare. My oldest daughter was into drugs, was a cutter, and but she was self-medicating. And so, but we didn't know. We didn't know. Um, and so anyhow, it was just, I was bedridden basically for 3 years, and my kids couldn't go to school. They were kind of in and out. We did homebound. We did a whole bunch of different things. And but they were also suicidal. And so that didn't help my situation. So anyhow, my husband he worked for a big global law firm for 20 years. And he's not an attorney, but he headed up business development. And in that role, he would help companies get venture capital and just help them. He was free and he would just help companies, and then they'd become clients. And so he met a small mom and pop company that had a cure for cancer, and they came in to look at patent work. And so when he met them, that was when we just found out about my daughter, literally. And he was like, oh my gosh, if you can cure cancer, do you know anything about Lyme? And the one gentleman was like, yeah, I think I can get rid of it. And so he sent us a mineral formula, and we nebulized it for 60 days. And long and short, we basically got better. Like I didn't feel any better for 30 days. But at 30 days, I was up out training young horses that had never been ridden. I had 4 at the time, and it was July, humid July. So to be able to do that after being bedridden all that time, I had hope, I had joy. Like it just brought my whole well-being back. And then my kids gradually got better. Like the anxiety didn't go away in that 60 days. That took some time. And what happens is it comes and goes, and it gradually sputters away. But it can, depending on the extent of it, depends on how long it takes. Everybody's totally different. But anyhow, we got better. And so these 2 gentlemen were completely intrigued, and they actually stopped their cancer research. And they had a deck of and really they were doing melanoma with a cream. And so they were like, oh, okay, Lyme is a spirochete. Who's the spirochete expert? And so they found a gentleman in California, and he was an oral surgeon. And so they called him and started talking to him because they didn't really know a lot. They didn't really know a lot about Lyme, so they just started studying it. And what this gentleman, the dentist, or the surgeon told him was, hey, you know, I find spirochetes and all these, and so people would go to him that had serious issues, like, root canals and, dentures and all that, it's not a dentist. And he was like, they all have spirochetes. He had a microscope in his office and he goes, I can get rid of it. When they come in, I can squirt their mouth with chlorhexidine and then I, look at it and they're fine. But the next time they come in, it's back. And so these, I'll just call them the scientists that worked with me. They were like, oh, so it's coming up in the saliva, it's coming up in the body fluids in the saliva. And so they went and they got a microscope and they looked at my family's saliva. And lo and behold, so there's 7 of us because I had 5 kids. The ones who did the treatment didn't have spirochetes, but the others did. And so we were the first family that was like, whoa, because I wasn't suspicious of my other 2 kids having it. And my husband had no symptoms. And so it was like, oh my gosh. So I ended up working with these guys for 5 years. And we took it to, a handful of holistic doctors. A lot of doctors aren't willing to change any protocols. Like they have their own lane they're in that they like to stick to. But what we would do if a doctor was willing, we were like, hey, do you want to try the formula? And they would try it and they would feel better. And even, I mean, most of them had it, but not all. And there were 2 doctors that, said they didn't have it. But they had major things go away. And so that's how we got into some of the clinics. And it was really just a handful. But so we studied, I would walk people through the treatment. And it was really pretty difficult because Lyme, especially when the people that would do it had Lyme for many years. And it does do damage. It does neurological damage. There's great healing that has to take place. And so once you do the kill in 60 days, and we would look at saliva before and after. And it worked every single time if they did it right. But we also learned you had to brush your teeth separate with stuff that would kill them because nebulizing didn't get in between your teeth. It had to be circulatory. So, anyhow, that 2014, June of 2014 is when I did the minerals, and I did it 60 days, same with my kids, and we didn't have access to it. And really we were being studied, but we didn't have it again. And we continued to get better over the next couple years. I had a daughter that couldn't pass tests her whole life, and she was in high school. It took a year for her to pass. And 9 months out, she was like, seemed totally better. I thought she would have done fine. She took SOLs, which is your standard year-end standard of learnings. And she failed all of them. The next fall, 15 months, 14 or 15 months after finishing, she retook them, didn't even study, and passed them all. And then her last 2 years was on the honor roll. Certain parts of the body take time, and the brain. And she was one that had high anxiety, and that had to take time. I had headaches as a child, so I really think I was born with it. I don't know for sure. But that took 2.5 years to totally go away. But at the end, it was like maybe, one a month. So when I say 2.5 years, people are like, oh no, you know. Um, and Kara, you had a symptom that I think you still are, uh, is still going to go away, but it takes, it takes some time. But just for example, we found my whole immediate family had it. My mother had had rheumatoid arthritis for 35 years. She couldn't even like go to the grocery store. Her legs would swell. And so she really had a very handicapped life where she just had to take it easy, low stress. She could function a little bit, but like her knuckles were, crooked. 35 years is a long time. She had headaches every day. So I thought I inherited it. Well, she did the minerals, and that was 9 years ago. And she's been in remission for her rheumatoid arthritis ever since, and just went on a 21-day cruise in Europe with my sister and her husband. And she's 80. She was born in 30. So she'll be 88 this year. So she did it in her late 70s.
Mhm.
And and so anyhow, that's our story. And we went from, like, number one, I'm just so thankful my husband didn't walk out on me, because he would be like, oh, you're taking another nap. Those are getting longer. Oh, you have such a big heart. Because I tell him I do things and they never get done. And he was like, you really have a big heart. Maybe you need to, like, because in the morning I could say, oh, and then I was done. Like I had an hour in a day. But it was a nightmare. And that's why I was like, we have to get this to people, because I probably wouldn't have a couple of my kids here today. Our family just, it was a wreck because we were all sick. So we didn't, my kids didn't get, they're missing years in their childhood of joy. And I always say, God will give you double for your trouble, you know, and he'll work all things together for good. And so we all kind of had that attitude, but we're very, very thankful that we recovered. And I've worked with people for 10 years, and my story is multiplied, a lot of people with a lot of people. So this is a simple thing. And there's also in this time, it's not just like one formula. I mean, you do have to kill them. And the one thing about this is minerals. It's zinc, copper, zinc, and magnesium in a very it's patented, it's very powerful. You cannot get it over the counter. And uh, it's amazing. And so, there's other things you can do too that are part of the equation, once you kill them. And that's what we're researching right now is, a third of the people feel better in the 60 days, a third take 2 to 3 months, and a third can take a year. And so now we're studying, okay, these people that are taking a year, what's up? Because they'll come to me and say, I'm not better. It didn't work. And then when I ask them, they're like, well, yeah, that's gone. Like a third of their symptoms are gone, but then they focus on what isn't, and they still might have fatigue and brain fog. And so now we have some testing where we can look and see, it's a body system issue, or it's, we can look and see, oh, and say you need to, take these things naturally that can help you, or whatever. And then the other thing too is emotional healing and retraining your brain, because when you've been sick, I took a test, even I think it was probably a couple years after my healing, and I consider myself a very positive, easygoing person. And when I took the test, I registered completely negative 100%. And it relates to thinking patterns when you were sick that I didn't even identify. And so, and I think you talked about that too, Kara, in your walk
Mhm.
where and that really helped you, where you had to go out and take your walks.
Mhm.
And so it's multifaceted, but you do have to kill them. Um, and then there's, so Lyme Revive is all about uh educating people on what really works. And we're discovering, it's not like, I mean, every day I'm learning. And I originally set up Lyme Revive uh in 2016. And really, the only thing I used it for at the time was there were a lot of parents, grandparents, like 60-year-old parents paying for their 40-year-old kids who couldn't work. They were paying for the protocol for them. And so what I did was I set up the foundation so they could donate to the foundation, and the foundation could pay for the protocol so they could get a tax write-off because they were helping. And, a lot of them were retired and they didn't have a lot of money. And so it was very helpful. So that's kind of, my story in a nutshell.
Mhm.
It's been an adventure and it keeps going.
Wow, thank you so much, Jeannie, for sharing all of that. That is quite the journey and has had an impact on so many people since that time. So thank you. So did you or your children ever see a tick bite?
Well, we lived in the woods, just like you
Mhm.
do. I can see the woods
Mhm.
behind you. We had ATVs, horseback riding, fishing at the river's edge. So yeah, we had tick bites, hunting. My son's a big hunter.
Mhm.
And we kind of felt like we lived on the edge of the world. Like you could hunt and shoot. We had on one side of us was just like nothing for miles. And so yeah, we had tick bites, and it was really, so I was struck when I look back at my life, I didn't even know it, but I was struggling with Lyme before that, but it wasn't, it was really just, the headaches, some headaches. I had a seizure one time in my 20s. Um, I had a period of depression in my late teens, 20s, where I was like, what is up? Because, everything's right. And we lived, my father was an officer in the Army, and his last post was in Maryland, which is, like Northern Virginia. And that's when my mom got sick,
Mhm.
and got her, which now we know was Lyme. But that was when she went from being totally healthy to, hers was a slow thing too. But so I think the tick bite, well, one other thing, when I've worked with people, the ones who are chronic have had the, when they got really sick was when they had trauma. And there was always some event. Um, and this might be the ones that don't have the tick bites, like when you have trauma, you go into fight or flight, and some people can't turn it off. If you can't turn it off, it messes up your whole body system. And so then your immune system goes down. And so then it can't fight. When maybe normally it could have fought it off, it can't. And we had a traumatic situation in our family where my best friend in the neighborhood, our kids played together. Um, the the dad killed himself. And I saw him right before he did it. And that was devastating. Like someone we knew, and so we had to be there. Uh, so that whole thing is really the turning thing that happened with our family and affected my kids too. Um, and I did have a tick bite before actually, because I was having my husband remove it from my back in like November. Our neighbor died in February, and then it was in April or May that I went to the first Lyme doctor. But when I went to her, I still had a scab on my back from November where my husband tried to dig it out. So, and I remember I did get a fever and I was in bed with chills for a whole day in December. So I remember a tick bite, but we had multiple tick bites, you know.
Mhm, mhm.
Um,
Right, I
and
see.
I think that just like blew it up.
Mhm, I see. In your experience, do people get Lyme in other ways aside from a tick bite?
Yeah, they're actually, I just heard this week that they finally did a study. I don't know if it was in Israel that mosquitoes carry it. You know,
Mhm,
it's in our environments, mice carry it. And so I actually had a spider bite um and got a bullseye the size of my stomach after being after having gotten better. And I took minerals and it got rid of it. But it was really quite scary because it was the size of my stomach. It was a spider bite. And I got my symptoms back immediately
mhm,
um, for a few days until I happened to have minerals with me, but we were going on vacation. And in the car, I got bit. I didn't really, I didn't really think anything of it. But when we had 12 people on vacation at the ocean and I had to go get food, provide for everybody. And all of a sudden I panicked and I couldn't. And
mhm,
it reminded me of my days in bed. And I was like, and then I had the heavy brain pressure and I was like, and then I saw the bullseye and I was like, oh my gosh. But
mhm,
I took the minerals and really within a day because uh, it didn't have a chance to get hold of me, I felt better. But that
mhm,
was you know. So yeah, you can get it. It's also because it's in your saliva. We found whole families have it. So you really have to, it's like lice. You've got to treat everybody because it's kind of like, if you think about it, if, and a mom with young kids, I don't know, have you ever had the stomach flu run through the family yet? Have you ever
mhm.
had
A while ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm,
So, I mean, I had it once and I'll never forget because it was like every 2 hours, another one would come down with it. You know, your saliva, it's on silverware, it's on, when you have kids and everything, it gets places. And so uh it's like lice. You got to treat everybody.
mhm,
And it's not that like my husband did the formula 8 months after me, and I was not reinfected 8 months later. But I think that we have noticed, and this goes away over time, but right after treatment, if you're around somebody with it and you happen to be someone that was really sick for a long time, you may experience symptoms around that person because your body, it's actually like it's a protectant, like an allergic reaction to let you know, hey, be careful. And we learned that from my one daughter dating. And because we were trying to figure it out, but that took time to learn. We had people not feeling better. And if we could talk them into treating the spouse um, or the family, it would go away. So
mhm. So what would be your recommendation to someone today who either just got a tick bite or someone who's experiencing mystery symptoms and they're kind of not really sure which way to turn?
I would definitely go get tested. And nowadays there's some really good labs and I'm in the I'm in the process of developing, all this information on the website. It's not there yet. But I would check in on it and see um where you can turn. And you really need to go to a doctor who is aware of Lyme because I don't think they learn it in medical schools. And so um so you want to go to a Lyme literate,
Mhm,
and also the primary care is just, you know, they're not focused in that way. I mean, there are some that are, but definitely get tested. Even DNA Connections, I think, has a saliva test that, you know, will can indicate it. But the Western blot, I'm not sure what the percentage is, and the doctors are supposed to tell you, but they're very inaccurate. Even Igenics, it can, I mean, honestly, I think the bioenergetic tests are better because uh it's very they're very sensitive, and everything has a signature. Every species, every food, everything has a signature, and it will check it with you and your body. And there are a lot of practitioners. There's several out there, several different types that you can get, but I've been really impressed with that. I didn't know much about it years ago, but they're almost too sensitive,
Mhm.
So the Lyme's not really in your blood. So they're looking for antibodies, and if you've been chronic, the antibodies can be gone. They're not showing active. So keep checking. I do honestly believe that most autoimmune disorders um, are Lyme, but they don't check. And in fact, my mom found out, like they thought maybe she had lupus or MS, and they just said, no, you're more rheumatoid arthritis. Well, went to Walter Reed. They were testing her for for spirochetes for 12 years and didn't tell her until later. And a treponeme is a spirochete. And what we would see in the saliva, we would see treponemes too. And dentists are very aware of them. They're very dangerous. I mean, they get in your heart. I think they're part of dementia and Alzheimer. They're just as guilty.
Mhm.
So, um, so really do your research and get tested.
Mhm.
Make sure it's an accurate one.
Mhm. Right. What are some of the most common myths that you see, or like misunderstandings? Just for example, people will say, "Oh, well, you have to get a bullseye rash, to have Lyme." So, what are some of the other myths that you see out there?
It is contagious. It's in your
Mhm.
saliva. If you look at syphilis, treponemes, the spirochete, is the culprit for syphilis. And it was called the kissing disease. It's in your saliva. So be careful who you kiss. They always say the mouth has more germs than anywhere in the body. And
Mhm.
that's why brush with baking soda, rinse with hydrogen peroxide periodically. Um, but anyhow, so and I do, I do think it's passed. I think all my kids were born with it, because I
Mhm.
think I had it, but it is contagious. Um, I believe antibiotics don't work. We would look at it, we looked under a microscope, we had a doctor give us doxycycline, and it was videoed, and it was very creepy. The spirochetes, it was liquid doxy, before it would even get to them, not even touching them, they actually straightened out like a rod and then folded up into the cyst form. And so that's kind of what they say, it'll go hide in the tissue. So, and what we would see, like it took a lot of training to really look at the spirochetes, because there were cyst forms and round body forms. And so that's why, like, my mother might feel better from her rheumatoid medicine, because it actually put them in cyst form. And that's what happens with some of these things. And he would see it in the saliva. He learned to recognize the cyst form, and so um, antibiotics don't work. And really, what I've seen people get better, build your immune system up. That's really, if you all these herbals and everything, they don't cross the blood-brain barrier. Minerals do. It's almost like kicking a hornet's nest. You're better off, you know, going to a doctor that'll help you build your immune system. And our bodies are amazing. That's why I say we're not autoimmune. Our bodies are fighting for us.
Mhm. Right, that makes sense. Would you say that it's only a certain species of tick that carries it as opposed to other species of ticks? So, for example, I've heard people say, "Oh, it was a big tick. It wasn't a small tick. I'm fine. I don't have to worry about that."
Oh, any, mosquitoes,
Right.
spiders, any tick. I mean, yeah, there's some that are, um, yeah, no, and it's not just tick. I mean, you can get it from
Mhm,
people. I mean, I've heard mothers say, "Oh, my daughter had Lyme and I was taking care of her and then I got sick."
mhm,
I've had people say my dog had fleas and I got Lyme from the dog. Or I went to the dentist and I had all this teeth work done and I've never been the same since.
mhm,
Um, there's different things that can, I honestly believe it's environmental. And
mhm,
these bioenergetic bioresonance testings basically verify that, but it doesn't mean you need to treat or it's like mold is in our environment and we can usually fight it. And when you have Lyme and you're chronic, your system can't fight it. And that's
mhm,
why Lyme people they start getting sensitive to everything in the environment that a normal body can. So, um, so I
mhm,
believe there's many, you can't go by tick. It's not just a tick-borne disease.
mhm. Right.
It's an epidemic.
Mhm.
And
Definitely.
I'm
So I probably already know the answer to this, but what would you say to someone who said like, "Oh, the tick was not attached 24 hours. It was not engorged. I don't have to worry about that." What would you
what
say
the
to someone who says
scientists
that?
said to me,
Mhm.
and over the 5 years. I mean, I talk to him 3 hours a day. How many times does your blood circulate in your body? It's like how many times, in a minute?
Mhm.
No, it's it's immediately getting in your body.
Mhm.
Now, there is something to say about getting doxy immediately. Like I don't understand why, and it's really hard to believe, but if people get it immediately, somehow um
Nip it in the bud.
it does nip it in the bud, but I wonder if it can come out later.
Mhm.
But there is something to that, but you gotta get it immediately.
Mhm. Right. What are some of the biggest misdiagnoses that you see that probably are actually Lyme? Like you already mentioned, one maybe arthritis, but are there any other kind of big, common misdiagnoses?
Um, Parkinson's, MS, lupus, Alzheimer's, dementia, um, a lot of just the autoimmune. Uh, and I'm starting to take on people who, like last weekend, I was at a party and met two people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we have one has MS and one has some other, autoimmune issue, and her dog just got diagnosed with one." Well, I'm taking them on, and we're going to be testing them and see if it's Lyme and anything that they don't understand. And even like thyroid issues, number one thing that affects most Lyme patients. They have thyroid issues. Um, I mean, it's real, the stomach, I don't know about you, Kara, but when I meet somebody who says, well, I'm gluten-free, sugar-free, carb-free, when they're on this special diet, dairy-free, I'm like,
Mhm.
you should get a Lyme test. That's huge. Half the people have digestive issues.
Mhm. Right, just some kind of big malfunctioning of a major body system, basically.
But it affects everybody different, and the whole
Mhm.
healing is different. So I think everybody should get one. I mean, well,
Mhm.
only if you have access to getting better, because I actually stopped telling people they had Lyme. Because back in those days, the formula was very expensive. It was $3,800. And you really needed to treat the family. And how do you tell them to treat the husband who doesn't have symptoms and spend so much money. And unless I knew they were open to it, it was better that they not know, because then your whole imagination can blow it up and go, oh, I have this. Oh, yeah, I have this and that. And you give it permission. So I just like, unless I knew they would be able to do the formula and get rid of it. So I don't necessarily recommend everybody go get tested. But
Mhm.
if you are suffering and you go to the doctor and they're like, sorry, everything tests fine,
Mm.
get it checked.
Right. How has the pricing changed over the years for either the treatment or the testing? Um,
So, it's kind of a long story, but I've been very fortunate over, the last 10 years to the inventor, gifted the patent to, our foundation. And it's been, and it's licensed out to a corporation for other diseases. But, I am able to make it available for like a tenth of what we used to sell it for. And um it's very it's a very difficult process to make. It's patented. In fact, my husband's law firm patented it for free, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars. They saw people getting healed. And so there are attorneys. And so that's amazing. The original inventor died. And so he wanted to leave it to a foundation so that it would stay in the right hands and not be squished. So we plan to get it to the world eventually. I mean, that's our goal.
mhm,
And it's really what God created. It's what he gave us that our soils are depleted of. So, but anyhow, the pricing is it's 182 a month. You need to do it at least 2 months, and continue until you feel better. And then do a 30-day dose a couple times a year just for health. So,
mhm,
and I do hope that it can go down more. Like when we sell big volumes, um, it'll make it a lot more economical, but it isn't set up to make a lot of money right now. It's really our goal is really to help people suffering, because by the time they find us, they're broke. I mean, a lot of people have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and
mhm,
they're sicker.
mhm. Right, they mortgage their house, they really lose
They
everything.
do. They
Mhm,
do. You know, it's, I mean, the stories, it's really, really hard. And I have to try and distance myself, because the other thing I learned is most people with Lyme are empathetic people. They take on other people's, they feel for people. They're very, they're very loving, caring
mhm.
people. So
Right. So, out of all the people that you have helped over the years and all the stories that you're aware of, is there any one that kind of sticks out in your mind that, really just puts a smile on your face?
my kids,
Oh, yes. That
absolutely.
makes
I
sense.
mean, uh, their lives wouldn't be too pretty today. So
Mhm,
yeah, my kids.
mhm,
But there are a lot of people, and it's funny because when I meet people, people, get referred to me, and they cannot get hold of the idea of getting well.
mhm,
And so it's kind of cool to be like, okay, get ready. You're gonna
mhm,
get better. And
mhm,
I mean, a lot of them cry, because, and I used to
mhm.
cry. I mean, I don't know. Did you cry a lot?
During
Um,
the Lyme illness?
yes.
Yes,
I
I
mean, you
did. Yes.
cry at the, so I talk to a lot of crying people and they cannot imagine anything working because nothing worked
Mhm,
before.
mhm,
And they've been promised too many times. So, uh, I love that,
mhm,
because, I mean, have you done that
mhm.
with people at all?
Well, I have one that sticks out in my mind. So there's a woman that I was speaking to, and when I first connected with her, she was just panicking. She was, every sentence out of her mouth was panic and, not being sure and, just in distress. So then she began taking the treatment, and then a few weeks later, she started texting me, and the words that she was using, I'm trusting God with this. I'm just feeling so calm and secure that I'm on the right path and healing will come in time. And I almost had to refer back to the name on this text message chain and try to remember, is this that same person that I was even talking to a few weeks ago? Like I wasn't even sure that I was the same person. But then fast forward a few weeks after that, I was on one of the Lyme support forums on Facebook, and I saw, one of the comments, someone is in a high degree of distress because of Lyme disease and their outlook on life. And then in the comments below, I actually saw this same girl encouraging that person that you're going to get better and it's going to be okay because I'm getting better and this is what I recommend you try.
Oh,
So I
wow.
yeah, so I saw this crazy turnaround within a span of maybe like 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was great.
Yeah, it varies. Um, and there are some people that I lose track of that haven't gotten better, but now, oh, testing. So I recently got introduced to a doctor, and uh she actually had a patient. She does the bioresonance testing, and she's been doing Lyme for 20 years. She never saw anybody, she never saw the Lyme go away off her comprehensive test. And she had a patient that did. And she was like, oh my gosh, what did you do? And he's actually a friend of my husband's and mine. Like he went to our church, and he was just a very successful entrepreneur in Northern Virginia. And he was like, oh, well, I'm doing mineral formula. And she was like, I want to get hold of this. And so that was about a year ago. And so we have, she now will offer the testing very discounted for people. Like, she doesn't even care about making money. Um, she is so excited because actually the minerals helped her, and they just helped her ex-son-in-law. Like, and actually, a clinic that she's associated with is starting human trials for a major disease and Lyme that we're getting ready to do. And so anyhow, so there is a a website where you can get the bioresonance testing for like $60 to know if you have Lyme. And normally these tests run about 300.
Mhm,
So that's pretty good. But anyhow, and the other thing too is now if we have difficult people, we can run the test, and we just ran it on someone, and he was not detoxing. He was inflamed, his body was still inflamed because he wasn't detoxing. He had a parasite, and he had a COVID spike protein. And so, but his Lyme was gone, and he didn't think it was gone, and he didn't treat his family. And so we're going to be researching these people that take longer. And I mean, that's a whole nother thing. The MTHFR factor is huge. And if you have it, take methylated vitamins, and you will be in better health and function better and be able to overcome Lyme easier. I don't want to get into that because we're probably near the end, but it's a huge thing.
mhm. Right. Yes, that's awesome. Wow. I've done that bioresonance test myself, and it did come back not showing Lyme. So wow, now I know the significance of that. That I didn't know she used it for many years and never saw that Lyme actually went away for anyone. So that's amazing. Awesome.
It's amazing. It's
Hmm.
amazing.
Hmm. Yes. Wow. Well, I think that I think it's obvious that there's great hope for people struggling with Lyme or any of these big diagnoses. And I think this podcast today gives so much information for people to use and to research further and really point them in a certain direction on what path they should take. So do you have any final comments? Anything else you'd like to share?
Um, yeah, just that there is great hope. There is great hope. And what is really hard about Lyme is it does, if you've had, people that have just got like um, you probably, recovered a lot easier. Some of these people, like even with me, I focused on what wasn't gone. And my husband's like, no, you're better. You are spending so much money. I redid the house. I put in hardwood floors upstairs. Because our carpets were gross from being sick. Like mom was in bed. Um, he was like, oh my gosh, because I redid the kitchen, I got all new appliances, put a stone backsplash, we put in stone floor, he's like, wait, that I was feeling better. So, but really just that there is hope. If you know something is wrong, the doctors tell you it's not. The sooner you get better, the better. I mean, you don't want to let it damage you. And if you are, you know, and if you are doing the minerals and you don't think it worked because you're still struggling, do the test so that you can see, okay, what does my body need to get better?
Hmm.
You know,
That's awesome. Yes, awesome. Thank you. All right, thank you. Well, that was Jeannie Grant. So she's a huge source of information. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us today. And thank you for joining us for our first episode of the Lyme Revive podcast. And we just have a final reminder that everything we shared here today is for entertainment purposes only. And so please just consult with your physician or your medical providers before, making any decision for your health. And I just want to wish everyone a great day. So thank you for joining. Thank you, Jeannie.
thank you so much, Kara.
You're welcome.